to what the conditions are on the ground. And we're responding to conditions on the ground. He got utterly rebuked by his own party yesterday in the Senate and House because they know where we've been. And as Mitch McConnell said to Martha MacCallum last night, we have troops in South Korea, Germany, and Japan. That's not an endless war. That's a presence.
Right. I think that maybe what the president and his team could do going forward is sort of describe to the American people why he feels like we need to move away from Afghanistan and Syria. It's not just about endless wars. It's because when the president came in, he created a national security strategy. And in that national security strategy, he is transitioning us to focus on great power conflict with Russia and with China. And so in doing that, that's a very different mission than the counterterrorism mission that we've been in Afghanistan and Syria. You have to build more ships. You have to build more weapons. This is why I thought, two highlights. He talked about why we got out of the INF treaty. That's not getting a lot of play today, but he talked about how the Russians have consistently violated that treaty for at least 10 years that we know about.
But the Russians are now in both places. They're now a presence in Afghanistan. They had peace talks in Moscow, unbelievably, and then they have a presence in Syria. So we're not running away from major conflict.
The Russians have a presence in both places because during the Obama administration, we allowed them. They got access, and they became a resurgent world power because President Obama underestimated them, and that's why you've seen such tough policies from this administration. One thing I would add: don't forget Venezuela. Also, something that could easily get looked over. One of the most important foreign policy successes of the past 2 years, when Treasury Secretary came in day one, whenever Mnuchin was sworn in, he put sanctions against the vice president of Venezuela. And this administration, for the past 2 years, has done a systematic rebuke of sanctions in Venezuela. Very important.
All right, guys, one more soundbite of import last night, and here is the president talking about the fight against ISIS. When he started, they were big. Now, not so much.
When I took office, ISIS controlled more than 20,000 square miles in Iraq and Syria.
This will launch in 15 months. If I were not president, there would be a major war with North Korea. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that was one of the things that President Obama said to the President Trump coming in, is this is going to be a huge elephant that you're going to have to take on. What was really interesting to me is that what he did not announce, and that's that he didn't announce a follow-up meeting with President Xi of China. We have that March 1st deadline for the trade disputes, and we know behind the scenes that the Chinese were pushing for a meeting. So having this meeting at the end of February, right before the March deadline as it relates to trade, I think is a very interesting maneuver from a foreign policy perspective. He's putting China on notice. So for me, the question is, what are we going to get out of this second summit? It's a huge accomplishment that we're not at war with them and that they haven't tested over the past 15 months. But now we need to see some really putting their feet to the fire on do we have a full accounting of the weapons? Are you starting to dismantle? And I think you're going to see Secretary Pompeo and the president continue to have this economic message to North Korea that you can be integrated into the world if you'll stop the craziness.
Perfect symbolism, Vietnam. Because they are a command economy that is now part of the world community who are tighter with us than they are with China, David, right?
That's absolutely right. And so going back to Syria, we had only 2,000 troops in Syria. Only 2,000 troops are there right now. It's a very low cost for us. But back to North Korea, which I think is very interesting. The president did break news. He's going to do this summit. That's great. But all he said about it is that there's more work to be done. I would have liked to hear how he plans to get Kim Jong-un to actually give up his nuclear ambition. He's right. Stopping testing for 15 months is great. That's an accomplishment, and President Trump should be proud of that. But the big enchilada is getting Kim Jong-un to move towards giving up his nuclear program.
It was one of the longest speeches ever, so there wasn't much more that we could go into.
And we'll know what happens by the end of this month. Pete, we've got one more soundbite. The president loves the troops. He's made that very clear. Here he is last night honoring a couple of our World War II veterans.
On D-Day, June 6, 1944, 15,000 young American men jumped from the sky and 60,000 more stormed in from the sea. Here with us tonight
It's a little bit disappointing, a lot disappointing for me. I left feeling exactly how Sean mentioned. How can you bring the country together when you can't agree on some basic human issues like that?
And if I can just join in, I think there's no more noble cause than to fight for the most defenseless that we have in our society, which are newborn babies or babies in the womb. And again, we believe in life at conception. We're talking about late-term abortions that Democrats are now supportive of. And again, I agree. It was a disheartening moment, but it shows how far and extreme the Democrats have gotten, where they're proponents of infanticide. And what's also disheartening too, there's a lot of pastors in the Democrat Party, a lot of pastors who are people of faith, who then say we're going to support these kind of issues. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Sean, I just don't think they understand. They didn't know what they were getting into. They thought they could just say, "I never heard that," and we'll get over that. But this is now a major issue in 2020, late term or fourth term abortion. And it's not someone's opinion. It is on tape with the governor of Virginia, and there are high fives from the governor of New York. Sean and Rachel, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Rachel says, it's not my job to get you into Harvard. It's my job to get you into heaven. She tells that to her kids.
That's right.
Love it. Thanks, y'all. Good to see you. All right, still ahead, President Trump praising women during his State of the Union.
We have more women in the workforce than ever before. Don't sit yet. You're
in Congress last night, the president calling on members to choose greatness instead of gridlock during his second State of the Union address. But did his message resonate with voters, the general public? Pollster and president of Maslansky and Partners, Lee Carter's here to put the president's speech to the dial test and see what they thought in real time. Welcome, Lee. Great to see you again.
Great to be here.
We're almost ready for election season. The first stop you want me to make is when he addressed women in the workplace. So
up on their feet, applauding this. It was unbelievable what he did in that moment. He got everybody together, everybody excited. It was energizing and memorable.
Well, they did kind of say, hey, they were saying, I got the job because I'm in Congress now because
well, that's
the election.
Their response, but he hit on every key point.
I think they chanted USA after that.
They did.
So the time in which the president wanted the theme to be coming together, but when it came to immigration, he knows it's not possible right now. So he brought...
Coyotes. That was an issue with independents. It didn't make them go off the charts. Immigration, though, really, really strong speech by the president.
Stacey Abrams gave the rebuttal, but she didn't listen to the speech. She wrote this ahead of time. So it's not really a rebuttal. It's what
she's blaming the president. Not everybody blames just the president. They also say the Democrats didn't handle this well, and that's why you saw the independents flatline.
Yeah, I felt like I went back to politics for that moment. I thought I was looking at a stump speech. So the grades there, and F by the Republicans. Great night, impactful night. We'll discuss over the next 2 hours.
Never be a socialist country.
Joining us right now is the host of Making Money on Fox Business, Charles Payne. Charles, were you shocked at the number of Democrats who did not applaud when the president said we will never be a socialist country?
If you'd have asked me this question a year ago, I would have said yes. Although Chuck Schumer did spring to his feet,
eventually.
Eventually. I think there are some people there, who understand that maybe their own party is being hijacked, and they want to maybe curb that. But you're right. There were a lot of parts of the speech that I was surprised that Democrats didn't get up to, including the fact that, yes, we will never be a socialist country. And by the way, all the things that the socialists are promising you are already happening.
Charles, the president, Senator Schumer said the president's going to say the union's strong, but the middle class is not feeling the prosperity. Is that true?
I can't say what people are feeling, but I can tell you what the numbers say. In 4 of the last 5 months, non-supervisory workers' wages have gone up faster than their supervisors. Wages overall are going on a spree that they have not seen in well over a decade. Unemployment ratio between blacks and whites is the narrowest it's ever been. There is a movement under the
Republicans and Democrats getting on the same page. State of the Union tried to do that in an hour and 21 minutes, the third longest in history.
The theme was choosing greatness. Listen to a portion of it.
Victory is not winning for our party. Victory is winning for our country. When you get down to it, there's nothing anywhere in the world that can compete with America. Since the election, we have launched an unprecedented economic boom. My administration has sent to Congress a common-sense proposal to end the crisis on the southern border. The proper wall never got built. I will get it built. Both parties should be able to unite for a great rebuilding of America's crumbling infrastructure. We have begun to fully rebuild the United States military. Our military is the most powerful on earth by far, and America is again winning each and every day. Members of Congress, the state of our union is strong.
That was one of the two times when those assembled did USA. They did it there, and then they did it as well after he saluted all the women who were dressed in white, who were part of the new incoming freshman class. The State of the Union is always a status report, how things are going so far. But he also tipped his hand at what his 2020 reelection plan would be. He's going to talk a lot about late-term abortion. He's going to talk about North Korea. He did break news. He said that at the end of this month, he's going to be meeting with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam. And he also talked about the wall and immigration and how it is a moral imperative. He said, I will get it built. As we heard a second ago, this is a moral issue. And while the Democrats are not going to give him $5.7 billion, he didn't issue an ultimatum. Essentially, he said, I'm going to give the committee a chance. Let's see what happens. If then, who knows what happens. But nonetheless, this is one of the reasons he ran and won on the presidency. And this is one of the big issues he talked about last night.
This is a moral issue. The lawless state of our southern border is a threat to the safety, security, and financial well-being of all America. Wealthy politicians and donors push for open borders while living their lives behind walls and gates and guards. Tolerance for illegal immigration is not compassionate. It is actually very cruel. We will always support the brave men and women of law enforcement. And I pledge to you tonight that I will never abolish our heroes from ICE. Thank you. Now is the time for Congress to show the world that America is committed to ending illegal immigration and putting the ruthless coyotes, cartels, drug dealers, and human traffickers out of business.
What I also thought was interesting, and for those who want to know what's going to get done by the 15th or what the president's agenda is in terms of immigration, you didn't hear about DACA, you didn't hear about TPS.
Well, that's not part of his latest deal.
Well, what he offered to avoid the shutdown or get us out of a shutdown, it was in there. And I'm just curious if this was going to be, he broke some news, as you mentioned, with North Korea. And I just thought he might be looking to break some news there because the numbers are overwhelming. I think it's in the 70s of people who look at the DACA as a section, Republicans and Democrats, 70% plus, they could be on a pathway to legalization, maybe within 10 years, just not their parents. I thought that would have been something. But at the end of it, he wanted everyone to know. We got 2 weeks either to another government shutdown, or I find money on my own, or we have emergency action.
I thought what was interesting, too, is he talks about unity in the beginning of the speech, and then he went through what he thought was immoral, and what he thinks is immoral, Democrats thinks moral, and vice versa. If you look at the abortion issue, Democrats think it's okay to kill a baby at the very last second. He thinks it's immoral. Democrats think it's immoral to build a wall. The president is for the wall because he says what's immoral is these women that are coming up to the United States that are getting raped. 1 out of every 3 is getting raped. And then he talked about the kids. He introduced so many different families who have been affected by illegal immigration. He talks about Elvin Hernandez, who is a legal immigrant. He's an ICE officer. He works in sex trafficking, and he has saved 300 women and girls, rescued them from sex trafficking.
The president was very effective in weaving real Americans into his narrative. You know, we need the wall.
In a way that didn't seem like a speech.
Right, exactly. And it went on and on. We actually had somebody who was called out of retirement, Tom Homan, to serve this president as acting ICE director. And he watched the president's 82-minute speech last night, and he had this observation about what he saw.
I think when all is said and done, maybe a decade from now, President Trump is going to be recognized as one of the greatest presidents of our generation, if not the greatest, because he's a great leader. He's done more.
Best for the people in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria.
He ran on this.
He ran on it, but ultimately, when you have looming threats of China and Russia and North Korea and Iran and big picture issues that will require resources and attention, being mired down there with more troops than is necessary is not the focus. He ran on it. He's right to focus on it.
Morgan, but this isn't tax cuts. This is responding to what the conditions are on the ground. And we're responding to conditions on the ground. He got utterly rebuked by his own party yesterday in the Senate and House because they know where we've been. And as Mitch McConnell said to Martha McCallum last night, we have troops in South Korea, Germany, and Japan. That's not an endless war. That's a presence.
Right. I think that maybe what the president and his team could do going forward is sort of describe to the American people why he feels like we need to move away from Afghanistan and Syria. It's not just about endless wars. It's because when the president came in, he created a national security strategy. And in that national security strategy, he is transitioning us to focus on great power conflict with Russia and with China. And so in doing that, that's a very different mission than the counterterrorism mission that we've been in Afghanistan and Syria. You have to build more ships. You have to build more weapons. This is why I thought, two highlights. He talked about why we got out of the INF treaty. That's not getting a lot of play today, but he talked about how the Russians have consistently violated that treaty for at least 10 years that we know about.
But the Russians are now in both places. They're now a presence in Afghanistan. They had peace talks in Moscow, unbelievably, and then they have a presence in Syria. So we're not running away from major conflict.
The Russians have a presence in both places because during the Obama administration, we allowed them. They got access, and they became a resurgent world power because President Obama underestimated them, and that's why you've seen such tough policies from this administration. One thing I would add: don't forget Venezuela. Also, something that could easily get looked over. One of the most important foreign policy successes of the past 2 years, when Treasury Secretary came in day one, whenever Mnuchin was sworn in, he put sanctions against the vice president of Venezuela. And this administration, for the past 2 years, has done a systematic rebuke of sanctions in Venezuela. Very important.
All right, guys, one more soundbite of import last night. And here is the president talking about the fight against ISIS. When he started, they were big. Now, not so much.
When I took office, ISIS controlled more than 20,000 square miles in Iraq and Syria. Today we have liberated virtually all of the territory from the grip of these bloodthirsty monsters. As we work with our allies to destroy the remnants of ISIS, it is time to give our brave warriors in Syria a warm welcome home.
All right, David, you worked during the Obama years, State Department. What about the fact that when he took the helm, ISIS was gigantic, and now it is a shadow of what it used to be?
Look, I go to Iraq frequently. I was just there a few months ago again. The president has it slightly wrong here. The effort to defeat ISIS was well underway when he became president. Remember, the operation to retake Mosul began in October 2016 before he became president under Obama. By January, when he became president, ISIS was well back on its heels. The President Trump continued the policy of Obama in terms of taking it to ISIS. He did it successfully. He did clear them from most of the territory in Iraq and most of the territory in Syria, but there was no great change in his approach towards ISIS. And what he overlooked was the fact that ISIS is still there in Iraq and in Syria. They've gone underground, and he didn't address how we're going to continue to combat ISIS if we pull troops out of Syria, as he mentioned he wants to do.
David, I love you, but there was a huge change. There was an unleashing of the warfighter on rules of engagement under this president to actually go and crush ISIS, not develop the situation.
They did when they were just 20 years old, 18 years old, and how far we've come as a country. Can we do that
again is the operative question.
The greatest generation, right? Our grandfather's generation.
They saved civilization. We've been able to poll the audience right here. CBS last night did an instant poll, not particularly scientific, but 76% of those who watched approved of the president's address. 72% agreed with his ideas on immigration. That must scare the Democrats. And then the speech will do more to unite the country. 56% said that, David.
Well, I mean, it was masterful use of these guests, especially the World War II heroes. Such a nice moment when he talked about how the World War II person who was in the Holocaust, who was part of the concentration camp, felt like the American soldiers who saved him came down from God.
Yeah.
It was a really nice moment.
Here. And Morgan, the moon landing. You can't argue with the moon. We're pro-moon, right? As a country.
You would think. I don't know. Last night, you never know. I mean, I just agree. When the Holocaust survivor saluted the World War II soldier, I mean, for me, maybe post 9/11, when George W. Bush, was giving the inaugural, that was, for me, it was only second to that. I mean,
That's
just
right.
one of
There's
the most
always
important
been a
moments.
guy I knew in Iraq said, when your Black Hawk came down, it was like an angel from heaven. That's who
Absolutely.
Americans are across the world.
And there was that man's angel right there. All right, Pete and Morgan and David, thank you very much.
You're coming back later. Don't go away.
See you then.
Thank you all. All right, this son of a fire captain was killed by an illegal...
Was a convicted felon. Corey Johnson opening fire on a SWAT team during a drug raid and killing trooper Lucas B. Dowell Johnson was also killed in the shootout. Investigators say he once served 23 years in prison for attempted murder and robbery charges. Embattled Virginia Governor Ralph Northam may hire an investigator to help clear his name in the racist photo scandal. That's according to the New York Times. His medical school now says the photo may have been mistakenly placed on his yearbook page. This happening as Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax's sexual assault accuser lawyers up. Vanessa Tyson
was honored at the president's address. Listen.
Year after year, countless Americans are murdered by criminal, illegal aliens. I've gotten to know many wonderful angel moms and dads and families. No one should ever have to suffer the horrible heartache that they have had to endure.
Would be hard to imagine. Our next guest, their son, was killed in a car crash right after Christmas on the 29th. Prosecutors say the driver, charged with criminally negligent homicide, was in the United States illegally and had been for more than 14 years. DJ and Wendy Corcoran were invited to the State of the Union address by Senator Marsha Blackburn, and they join us now. Good morning to all three of you. Senator, I'll start with you. Why was it important? Why did you want the Corcorans to be sitting with you?
The Corcorans have stepped forward, and they are working so diligently and lovingly to remember their son Pierce, to honor his life, and to come around other Angel families and individuals that have been adversely impacted, Ainsley, by drugs, human trafficking, gangs, sex trafficking. And they fully realize that until we secure that southern border, that every state's a border state, every town's a border town, because of the impact of illegal entry into our country and onto our streets of our neighborhoods and communities.
Wendy, DJ, I'm so sorry for your loss. We reported your son's death. We put up his picture countless times and asked America to pray for y'all as you were going through your grieving process, and I know you probably still are. You definitely still are. Wendy, what did you think about the speech last night, especially when it comes to immigration?
I thought that it was exactly what we had hoped to hear. I thought that he is still trying to get both sides to work together toward a resolution. Of course, the wall for us seems like the perfect start toward immigration reform.
DJ, what were your thoughts? Thank you, by the way, for serving. We love our fire department, our firemen and women. You're in the Knoxville Fire Department, the captain of that department. Thank you for your service. What did you think of the speech last night when it comes to immigration, and what were your thoughts when it comes to your son?
I thought that the president was dead on. I thought that he nailed it. I thought that he was very compassionate. I think that he left an option there for the other people that came here legally. I thought that he made good points that if you're here illegally, that's the problem. It's not the people that are here trying to make a better life for themselves, but the people that are here doing it illegal.
Wendy, it has to be surreal to know that you're there as an angel parent, remembering your son, but also doing good so that this doesn't happen to other families. What would you like to say to the Democrats, to the Republicans, to your senator about making change
in the United States? We have just heard that Mexican cities, in order to remove the illegal immigrants from their communities, are getting trucks and buses to bring them up to our country in areas where there is little border protection. I have ordered.
We handle $22 billion in exports to the U.S. through this border, and it works both ways. Also, the imports coming in from the U.S.
So the mayor talking about the impact of these caravans on this border town. And of course, in Tijuana, where you were watching those migrants watching the State of the Union, we talked to the mayor back last November, and he said the same thing, that these are bad. Meanwhile, 2 more caravans are set to start in the coming week in Honduras, guys.
All right, Griff Jenkins with a live report from Mexico. Thank you very much.
Moments that contrast the differences between the parties. And when you have the Democrats booing because President Trump was exposing and continuing to hammer the fact that these caravans are endangering the country and posing enormous costs to people at the border, let alone in the interior, this is a message I think that is going to resonate all the way through 2020 and is going to pose a huge optics problem for the Democrat Party. They can laugh and snicker and sneer and smirk and sit in their seats and
where they always seem to give the president, don't give the president any respect. They did it
about our president before he even uttered a single word. And I want to call out specifically Van Jones. I think that he should leave mental health diagnoses to professionals. After all, Van Jones should be reminded that he praised President Trump for something that he highlighted during the address last night, which is his embrace of criminal justice reform and a very concrete accomplishment with the First Step Act. That moment with Alice Johnson was one of many of the defining moments of unity that the Democrats say, right? They pay lip service to unity, and then they had spent the entire time tearing him down when most of normal America outside of the Beltway appreciated those moments, and Alice Johnson was just one of them.
It was indeed. All right. Michelle, thank you very much with your analysis in this post-game show.
Thanks, Michelle.
You bet.
I was stunned to see him say that because there's so much time in criminal justice reform. He had 2 or 3 examples of it. And Van Jones kept going to the White House. He goes, I keep expecting him at the last minute to change his mind, but he got something done President Obama couldn't.
Yeah, he had the guy who was the first recipient of the First Step Act that was there and said he did Bible studies in prison and now he's out and he wants to do good.
Well, that was one of the moments. There were many others, and Jillian joins us with some of them right now.
That's right. Good morning. The president's annual address had social media buzzing last night, and one of the most unexpected and heartwarming moments was when lawmakers sang happy birthday to one of the president's special guests. Watch this.
10 seconds.
House Speaker was reading all night, some suggesting she was reading the Mueller report, Ted Bundy's Wikipedia page, or the script for Game of Thrones. I don't think any of those are true. A spokesperson says she was looking at a copy of the president's speech. The California Democrat did rise to clap for President Trump on several occasions. And there was also this adorable moment now going viral. 11-year-old Joshua Trump winning over hearts online after he appeared to doze off in the audience. Look, everyone gets tired, right? The young man has no relationship to the president, but he was invited to the speech after being bullied at school for simply sharing a last name. Guys.
It's exhausting.
It's a late night.
Yeah, he had to travel there. Plus, kids have to go to school like 7:30 in the morning.
I get tired all the time.
It was a kid being a kid.
I will say, I thought it was late, too. I mean, we go to bed early, so I thought a 9 o'clock speech is pretty late, especially for the children.
He's 11. All right. Jillian, thank you very much.
All right. Meanwhile, 18 minutes before the top of the hour, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was in the room last night as President Trump gave his State of the Union address. He was also at the Super Bowl and says the president sent a clear message about America's greatness. He will join us.
Victory is winning for our country.
Well, at least half the hall stood up for that. President Trump addressing America in his second State of the Union address. So what do the voters think about what he had to say?
Let's ask Todd Pyro. He is talking to them, some of the voters, live over breakfast with friends at the Ease Club inside the Indian River Colony Club in Melbourne, Florida. Hey, Todd.
Hey, guys, good morning to both of you. And when you come to a military club, you have to ask the question, what did you think when the president said, we have the best military in the world? What was your response? Yeah, I was pretty sure that was going to be the case. And what better way to begin is by speaking with the General Ben Lewis, served in numerous administrations. You said the State of the Union shows the president knows what the country needs. Why?
He started with a strong base, proved that he can build a good economy, he and his administration, and lays out a plan for keeping it strong so that we can have a strong military, we can have a strong population with its meeting its base.
Nurse, Alberta, you love the president's emphasis on border security. Why?
Because if our borders are not safe, then our country is not safe.
That's pretty simple. There it goes. James, Army Corps of Engineers, you like the president's comments on the military, the concept of, and I'm reading this, get in, get it done, get out. Why?
To keep us safe and allow us.
Now, Kathy, you're brave. Kathy leans liberal, but she says she was pleasantly surprised by the president's speech. Why?
I was pleased with the overall tone, and as an educator, I was pleased that there was at least a brief mention of education. I am not convinced that we have enough data to support school choice for all children. However, I would have really liked to see an emphasis on making America's public schools great again.
Dee, thank you. A great crowd. We've been having so much fun. This is the largest crowd we've ever had. Back to you guys in New York City.
All right, at
you
ease.
can keep cheering.
Very nice, Todd.
Thanks, a lot of spirit.
All right.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says the president sent a clear message about America's greatness, and he joins us next.
Could do it in a more measured way than an investment in remaking societies.
What
which
is
we
more
tried to
measured
do
than
for a
taking them on
decade.
directly using the Kurds and their trained forces as war fighters directly against Al Qaeda, ISIS, Al Shabaab,
But that's
and
not.
others?
That's mostly not what we've done for the last 18
It's been
years. We've
unbelievably
sent
successful.
American boys and girls to Afghanistan and Iraq
Syria,
to remake societies.
3 casualties
and it
in
didn't
3
work.
years.
And I think a minimal presence in Syria is prudent. I agree with you, Brian. But,
Morgan, let's talk about North.
That's a difference of opinion we're going to have.
Let's talk about North Korea, because the president announced that he is going to have the summit on February 27th and 28th with Kim Jong-un. This is unbelievable. He said there has not been a missile launch in 15 months. If I were not president, there would be a major war with North Korea. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that was one of the things that President Obama said to the President Trump coming in, is this is going to be a huge elephant that you're going to have to take on. What was really interesting to me is that what he did not announce, and that's that he didn't announce a follow-up meeting with President Xi of China. We have that March 1st deadline for the trade disputes, and we know behind the scenes that the Chinese were pushing for a meeting. So having this meeting at the end of February, right before the March deadline as it relates to trade, I think is a very interesting maneuver from a foreign policy perspective. He's putting China on notice. So for me, the question is, what are we going to get out of this second summit? It's a huge accomplishment that we're not at war with them and that they haven't tested over the past 15 months. But now we need to see some really putting their feet to the fire on do we have a full accounting of the weapons? Are you starting to dismantle? And I think you're going to see Secretary Pompeo and the president continue to have this economic message to North Korea that you can be integrated into the world if you'll stop the craziness.
Perfect symbolism, Vietnam. Because they are a command economy that is now part of the world community who are tighter with us than they are with China, David, right?
That's absolutely right. And so going back to Syria, we had only 2,000 troops in Syria. Only 2,000 troops are there right now. It's a very low cost for us. But back to North Korea, which I think is very interesting. The president did break news. He's going to do this summit. That's great. But all he said about it is